Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It's Friday, August 23rd today, and I'm sitting down to do a little planetary update. For those of you who follow my channel, I have been out of town for about the past week or so. I was at a family reunion in Minnesota, and unfortunately had really terrible internet connection at the place that I was staying. It was out in the country. It was a beautiful place, but the internet wasn't great, so I wasn't able to do any updates. So I've been getting a lot of emails being like, where did you go? What's going on? I'm like, I haven't had internet. So now that I'm back in town, I'm happy to do an update and just get us caught up on what's happening. So we're rolling into the last part of the month, which features a whole lot of Virgo energy. Let's take a look at that. So you're going to see, I'm going to highlight this so that you can see exactly what I'm pointing to. So we've got a stellium forming right now in Virgo. This stellium is only going to intensify as the month goes on. Right now, Venus and Mars are conjoining in Virgo. And then pretty soon, Mercury is going to enter Virgo. That's going to happen on the 29th. And then right after, on the 30th, 29th into the 30th, we're going to have a new moon in Virgo. So you can back this up and see how this will look. Here we go. So here is the new moon in Virgo. So you've got Mercury exalted in its own domicile in Virgo, new moon in Virgo, Mars in Virgo, Venus in Virgo, right? And what's interesting about this upcoming new moon at the end of the month, which is forming now slowly, is we have this incredible kind of T-square energy taking place between Jupiter and Neptune, while there's also just a whole bunch of trines feeding in, almost like a grand Earth trine energy feeding in from Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus. So you've got a ton of Earth and water towards the end of the month. And all of these Virgo planets square to Jupiter in a fire sign. This is really unique, and it comes down to it. Astrology has a lot to do with observing small interactions and paying attention to nuances and what they might mean for us individually, little tips or clues they might be giving us about how things are going to unfold in our day-to-day life, or big picture stuff, big themes that you might be noticing in the news or in your life. And that's kind of a macro-micro distinction you can make. But really, this whole idea of there being a more smaller scale of details that you observe with astrology, and then a bigger scale of things that you can look at, big trends, big themes, big events, big movements, as opposed to small nuanced details. That's actually something that happens specifically at this time of year when a lot of planets come through Virgo. And if there also happens to be any planets in Sagittarius or Pisces in particular, because those are the Jupiter ruled signs where you're going to get more of that big picture thinking in mind. Or that just the big picture energy. So Jupiter ruled signs like Sagittarius and Pisces, which you're seeing all of these planets in Virgo engage with at the end of this month through a T-square, Neptune and Pisces, Jupiter and Sagittarius. These are the planets of dreams and visions and hopes and aspirations and the future and youth and spring. They're very, Jupiter's signs are fertile. Jupiter in Sagittarius is like where there's a will, there's a way. It's kind of like think of a circuit rider, in the old days, like when I grew up in the Methodist church, so John Wesley was a circuit rider who rode around sort of teaching and preaching, kind of a Sagittarian archetype of a guy on a horse with a kind of a fiery minister. Or you have like the archetype of like the biker, when I was a kid growing up in Minnesota, I was reminded of this while I was just in Minnesota. There'd be streams of bikers going out to Sturgis, which I believe is in South Dakota. And they'd be going out to the Black Hills, basically. There'd just be streams of bikers going through this big, like, biker convention. And, they looked, to me as a kid, they looked like, pirates. They, you know what I mean? Like pirates, and yet some of their bikes were really sort of sci-fi looking. This was before I knew anything about, for example, steampunk. Have you ever heard of steampunk? But it was clear to me that these people were badasses. You know what I mean? Like, and that they were rebels and that they were dangerous and fun all at once. So Jupiter in Sagittarius, even though Jupiter in Sagittarius can be the minister, the sage, the preacher, the yogi, like that, the guru, but it can also be like the rebel, biker, trickster, pirate. It just has that kind of dangerous but fun quality to it. That's not that's not in Virgo's wheelhouse. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not where Virgo likes to hang out. Virgo is about purity. Virgo is about meticulousness and carefulness and thoughtfulness and attention to detail. Virgo is the energy that comes right before the fall equinox. This is the preparation for the moment of judgment, the harvesting or threshing moment. Saturn is exalted in Libra. Remember, Saturn, the lord of karma. This judgment is coming as the sun enters the underworld in Libra. The sign right before that we're in right now, that's Virgo. And Virgo is the place where it's the harvest maiden, right? It's like someone, getting ready to take an SAT where your merit as a student and all you've done in high school is about to be judged. So you better prepare. Virgo similarly is like the usher that takes us into the underworld where our hearts will be judged on the scale along with the feather. Is your heart heavier than a feather? This kind of mythic imagery is associated with Libra and the entrance to the underworld. So who prepares us for that? Who brings us there? Also, Virgo season, when the sun enters Virgo, we're thinking about the seasonal metaphors available to us. We're thinking about preparation for, the harvest moment, agriculturally. So how did your harvest do? Did you have a nice yield? Did you make money? Was it bountiful harvest or not? Were the crops sick, or did you not make much, or did you underproduce, or, and these are matters of life and death when it comes to, agriculture in the old world. Are you going to make it through the winter or whatever? So similarly, there's a pressure on Virgo to prepare for the entry into darkness, for the inevitable darkness that will come, right? There's a sense of foreboding with Virgo, a sense of the inevitable decline, loss in the future that will come, and the need to prepare for that, the need to prepare for judgment. Your work, your labor will be judged. Was it valuable? Was it useful? Was it good? Was it clean? Was it efficient? These are the concerns of the sort of chaste harvest maiden. But there's also one of the other things that comes through with Virgo. There's lots of things we can talk about with Virgo, but the meaning of the sun in Virgo, part of what I'm wanting to cover today, because the sun has just entered Virgo as well. When the sun enters the sign of Virgo, it's as though there is also a sense of, summer is almost over. And there's almost like a puella archetype that's present in Virgo. So the puella is like the eternal youth, but it's the feminine or female, you could say, version of the eternal youth. Aries, which is the antithesis to Virgo, is like the puer, the eternal youth as a boy, the young hired hand who is carefree, doesn't belong to anyone. That's Aries. Traditionally, the sign was associated with people who were you could hire out as mercenaries or as workers, that were young men who were free and unattached to anything. So Virgo is associated with women or young girls, let's say mythically, who can't be bought, they can't be sold in the sense of they're eternally free. So for example, the Vestal Virgins in Rome are a good example of the puella archetype, where they are servants of Rome, and yet they have all of these really unique sort of magical abilities, and they're revered almost like gods or goddesses, and they can vote, they can do things that other people can't. The health of the empire is dependent upon them keeping the hearth fire of Rome, but they are also they're feared. You can't mess with them. They don't belong to anyone. Right. So similarly, this time of year, there is a sense of being young, and there's a sense of the inevitable death that's coming in the autumn, regardless of where you're located on the planet. These are archetypal signatures. There's a sense of death that's coming. There's a sense of foreboding, and yet there's also a sense of floating above it, the knowledge that carries one through the threshold of death, and also the knowledge that keeps us alive, keeps us clean, keeps us healthy, sort of keeps us ticking, despite the fact that we're about to hit dark times. That's especially what the Vestal Virgins were known for. They kept Rome healthy. Whatever was happening, as long as the Vestal Virgins were sort of keeping the fires of Rome lit, all would be well, right? So similarly, there's something in us, right, that is called upon. And it says, okay, look, you got to clean up your act, right? Or you've got to, it's time to clean out the drawers, or it's time to purge or do some fall cleaning, or even, you could even think of it like spring cleaning. Whatever the case is, it's that time to cut away at what is excessive and to clean and purge and make sort of bright. And Virgo does that very carefully and very thoughtfully, because it knows that the health of the ability to make it through the dark times is dependent upon this kind of meticulousness, care, and thoughtfulness that we do right now. So that's kind of like just a broad, big picture of Virgo. Another thing is that, Virgo, people who have a lot of Virgo energy in their charts, let's say, are oftentimes looking very carefully at the difference between doing things in a way that is according to, say, the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. So, for example, sometimes you'll find the mythic archetypal psychological dynamic, which Jung and many others have written about, which can apply to men or women, called the virgin and the whore dichotomy. So you're either totally pure, or you're either, kind of totally, whatever, lusty. Like you're either just someone who likes to go out and party and get laid a bunch, or you're just like, prim and proper and maybe prude. So that kind of that dichotomy, most of the time it's a false dichotomy, right? No one is like so black or white. But archetypally, it's a dichotomy that we need to know something about, especially if we want to understand Virgo, because preparing ourselves for the road ahead, being meticulous, being careful, being clean, being thoughtful, preparing ourselves for the difficulties ahead, cleaning up, cutting away at excess, all of those good things that Virgo is associated with, this time of year is associated with. We can sometimes think that it's by doing those things that we find happiness, but it's not. Those are just maintenance things. You know what I mean? It's like if you go to, if you go to a restaurant, right? There's a lot of like dirty stuff happening at restaurants, a lot of liquids, especially of kids. Like we usually tell people, like, when we go to a restaurant, it's like, okay, we're about to trash your entire restaurant, but here we come. So there's a lot of dirty stuff that happens in a restaurant, right? Like you're sitting there and there's a lot of liquid, there's a lot of food, there's a lot of stuff hitting the floor, it's a mess. But the more that you go to, the more your dining experience it elevates, you go to like nicer and nicer establishments or whatever, the more concern and attention is paid to keeping the experience, the aesthetic, and the mood as clean and sort of pure as possible. But if you've ever met a really uppity person, they will mistake that kind of the protocol, and they will mistake the cleanliness and the order and all of that. They'll mistake that for the actual experience of dining, right? So if I've been to some nice places before, not that I eat at nice places often, but I've been to some, what I would consider some pretty nice places before. I'm sure there's a lot better. When you go to those places, if you're used to eating in a more casual manner, you can feel suddenly kind of rigid, and it can make it difficult to actually enjoy the experience of having a drink or having a meal or conversing with friends or a date or whatever, right? So what we want out of Virgo is for Virgo to provide us with the cleanest, most efficient, organized, supportive environment that we can manage without choking the experience itself, right? So now let's just say, what happens when you mistake this, when you make this mistake of thinking that the setup and the protocol is the experience? Here's what happens in the world, in any movie that you watch or a novel that you read. When people mistake prim and proper for happy, eventually they need to have an experience of becoming a rebel, right? So like if you think of some of these like Victorian movies, you've seen this is common, like Downton Abbey or something like this. There's always someone who's just way too concerned about being proper and having the proper etiquette and so forth. And eventually they're the ones who sleep with the milkmaid. Do you know you know what I mean? Like, that's the one who ends up having an affair. That's the one who gets caught in the barn, with the staff. So why is that? Well, what is that getting at archetypally? It's getting at the fact that if you mistake etiquette and control of behavior and control of circumstance and environment, cleanliness of circumstance and environment, attention to detail, if you mistake that for joy or for actual personal intimacy and communion with others or your environment, over a long enough time, you'll rebel. Your own soul will rebel, because our souls find order offensive unless it goes along with meaning and intimacy. Our souls actually find order and etiquette and protocol offensive unless it goes along with beauty. So this is why Virgo might be preparation, but remember that signs come in a sequence. The next sign is Libra, which is about beauty, balance, right? So when you have preparation and it complements the actual experience of something, then you have an aesthetically pleasing, beautiful, substantive experience. Interestingly, both Libra and Virgo can suffer from the vanity of experience. Well, it looks nice, but is it nice? Well, it's organized, but is it pleasing? Do you know what I mean? So that's something we have to pay attention to at this time of year. Now, a lot of things that come up during the Virgo time of year have to do with what happens when we break that rule. Okay, so let's go back to our story. Look, what happens when you sleep with the milkmaid in the story, right? Well, unless there's been some, crime that's happened, unless something bad has happened, typically what happens is a person has to start loosening up. So right now, even if so much of the energy is about getting organized, if it's about being meticulous, if it's about getting your ducks in a row, if it's coming back and trying to bring in some sense of order, and we're trying to turn the page into autumn and the kind of dark time of year, and we're trying to kind of, okay, like, I'm trying to make sure that the joy of summer can live on by having like a nice orderly fall. You think of all the parents right now that are trying to get everything set up so that the joy of the summer can continue in a more regimented way as their kids go back to school. Like, how can we have a joyful first semester back? You know what I mean? So that's everyone's thinking about that. How can we turn the page as we're going into fall? So we want to think about that, and but we want to do so without exercising so much control, so much of an attempt to try to control everything that we don't choke others, that we don't bother others by being overly rigid, or ourselves overly critical. So that's something to keep in mind right now. But also, how do we craft and turn the chapter? How do we kind of cut back, organize, distill our experiences, capture the essence of something great that we experienced with the light of the summer, and carry it forward with a plan, with vision. So Virgo can help us do that right now as well, especially with a boatload of planets moving through Virgo. It doesn't even really matter which planets they are. It's just the fact that there's a huge wave coming through Virgo. People spend way too much time with stelliums trying to break down what it means that, each individual planet in this, you'll just get exhausted that way. It's far easier to just be like, yeah, this is an earthy, mercurial sign, and a lot of planets are passing through that house right now. So Venus, our relationships, love, beauty, or your physical appearance, your sense of style or taste, Mars, the conflicts that you're having, the organization that you're doing, the projects you're implementing, Sun and Moon, a new moon is being planted, a new cycle that's beginning with that Virgoan spirit. It's going to bring forth a lot of this kind of stuff that we're talking about. Mercury as well is there. So there's the host of the house being like, hey, I'm here and I'm on board with all of this and I'm helping. That's good, because we have a lot of positive energy to bring to the experience, or a lot of support to do these kinds of Virgoan things. But you don't want to choke yourself off. You don't want to kill it. Remember what the point of doing anything Virgoan is right now, which is to help move our life around in a way that will support deeper intimacy, deeper beauty, deeper meaning. If it's not in service to that, this is why we say that Virgo is a servant. If it's not in service to that, then we'll start gradually choking out the good stuff. And Virgo energy can very quickly devolve into fear, anxiety, control, perfectionism, etc. I'm not saying anything that probably a lot of you don't already know about Virgo, for those of you who know something about astrology, but yeah. Okay, so now let's bring it back to the biker. We started off with a biker, right? So we took a little detour and visited the sun in Virgo. Let's talk a little bit about Jupiter in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces, both Jupiter signs. Jupiter and Neptune are in a square with one another. They're going to be re-engaging with that square over the course of the next month. So this is time to formulate the vision, formulate the plan. And Virgo is going to help to execute, prepare, and implement on the level of the details. That's a very simple way of thinking about it, but I promise you it's a very effective way of framing the forecast for everyone right now. Between now and say the fall equinox right around September 22nd, whatever it is, 23rd. Between now and then, the energy of the Virgo new moon that's coming at the end of this month, and then the Jupiter Neptune square that's engaging with all of those Virgoan planets will present us with both a very passionate, exciting, dreamy, enthusiastic, and strong-willed set of visions or intentions. Like, that's where I want to go. This is what I want to do. It's beautiful. It's romantic. It's idealistic. It's transcendental. It's inspiring, but also like where there's a will, there's a way. You think about, I'm going to take a risk. The pirate on the bike, right? I'm going to take a risk. It might be dangerous, but it's going to be fun. That kind of energy is behind all of this right now too. And then again, back to the Virgo energy saying, how do we implement? How do we organize? How do we prepare, etc.? All of this is for nothing if we don't remember to be present for all of it, right? It's like, okay, a biker might look badass, but imagine if inside they're going like, okay, do I look like a badass? Do I look like a badass? Am I driving the bike in a way that looks cool? That's nothing fun about that, right? If that's the interior dialogue of the biker, they could look cool to others for a hot second, but they'll be exhausting themselves internally. Similarly, let's not white knuckle our visions right now, right? Let's not like white knuckle our dreams. Virgo can help us prepare, but if we start white knuckling, just ease up a little bit in the next month, especially. Remember this, that the Tao teaches us some really valuable lessons. The Tao Te Ching and the I Ching, which I work with pretty regularly. The teachings of the Tao are many, obviously, but one of them that I really like is that, let the natural, this is something that a friend of mine said to me recently as well, let the natural course of your life, dictate the timing of things. So for example, like we're in the process of preparing to sell our house. And of course there's concerns about the market. Oh, are we going to hit a recession? What's going to happen? Should we sell now? Oh my God. And I was talking to a friend and he said something really wise, very much like a Taoist. He said, just don't make your life insane because you're afraid of what could happen to the markets, right? Like, instead, prepare yourselves to move. And when you're feeling like it's the right time naturally, where it doesn't feel like it's going to throw everyone into stress and trauma mode, then just go for it. And if you follow that, naturally things seem to work out. This guy who's been working in mortgages and banking for a long time is a friend of mine. And he was like, that's my advice, because what I've noticed over 20 years of doing this is that, nobody can predict the ups and downs of the market and timing and when they're going to hit a good window or when they're not or whatever. People try to pay us astrologers to know those kinds of things. And astrology is really good at helping us understand the themes, the ups and downs, the timings of certain things. Is there a recession coming, for example? A lot of people have been asking me that lately. Yeah, probably. Looks like Saturn-Pluto conjunction over the next year could indicate something of a transformative period of austerity, right? That could be a recession, be karmically fitting in lots of ways for our country and its leadership right now. But, we'll see. We don't know. So as astrologers, like I might have a hunch about that, but I don't know ultimately. So what am I going to do? I'm going to, similarly, I've known for a long time, I've known that Saturn was going to oppose my sun. Could I have predicted I was going to get a kidney stone? That's actually like very literal, interpretation of Saturn opposite my sun. Like I'm not going to guess that in advance. I knew what types of things to expect. When I got a kidney stone, I was not surprised, but I didn't, I wasn't sitting there like it will be a kidney stone. So similarly, like none of us really know the future. Astrology is not so much in service to our future as much as it is in service to our anxiety about the future. Our anxiety about the future is eased with astrology because we become informed about the kinds of themes and patterns that we're relating to as we move into the future. So as we understand what kinds of themes await us, we participate in the unfolding of those themes in very interesting ways that a lot of people don't get to do because they don't think about that level of reality. So that's what astrology is good for. Similarly, right now, bringing it all the way around, you might be having a lot of like big realizations, epiphanies. This is very Jupiter, Neptune. Neptune, the planet of imagination, Jupiter, the planet of expansion. Big aha moments, right? But we have to ask ourselves about those, big, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. We have to ask ourselves about these big moments, right? These big plans or these big visions. How do we implement them carefully without driving ourselves insane, while also allowing for the natural unfolding of events in time to surprise us, to teach us, and to guide us? That's the teaching that I want to get across most right now, right? So how again, we have big visions, big dreams coming, Jupiter square Neptune, but a big stellium in Virgo. How do I prepare? How do I plan? How do I plot that course in an earthy way? Got the trines from Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn, a trine from Uranus and in Taurus. A lot of earth there, a lot of practical steps that have to be taken. How do I take those practical steps without white knuckling it, without becoming the paranoid biker? I guess if that's even a thing. But how do we do it without white knuckling it? And by allowing the natural course of events to surprise us. I think that's the big question we should be asking ourselves right now. For example, one of the things that I think it's, for example, my wife and I we met with a Marie Kondo expert last year, which was pretty cool. If you've ever heard of her, she's like a organization tidying guru from, I think she might be from Japan. Anyway, we had one of her students come over and give us some lessons on tidying because my wife was changing her office space, moving her office to home in preparation of closing the yoga studio. And so she's giving us these instructions about tidying. And one of the things that she said is she was like, tidying is joyful. Like a lot of people find tidying obnoxious. Tidying is joyful when you're only in possession of things that bring you joy. When you're in possession of a lot of things that don't bring you joy, then tidying is a chore because you're having to handle and move and rearrange and clean lots of stuff that you actually don't like, that's just dead stuff. So a big part of the Marie Kondo method, as I understand it, is not just getting rid of things, but it's also about figuring out those few simple, sweet things that bring you joy. And then when you say goodbye, say thank you and goodbye to the things that don't bring you joy, surround yourself with those that do, your space is cleaner, right? It's cleaner and it's more joyful at the same time. It's easier to tidy. Tidying becomes joyful. But the deeper thing that this provides you with is it provides you with, when you have that kind of space around you, when you've kind of cleared away the detritus and you have a cleaner space filled with fewer things that you actually take joy in, more clarity about what you want to do or how to make choices about your future is also available to you. And it becomes easier. It just becomes easier to make choices. Choices about how to move forward become more natural because you're dealing with less noise in the environment. That's also something to think about now as we're coming into the end of the month and moving into this new moon cycle in Virgo with this T-square to Jupiter and Neptune. It's like, how can I clear space simply so that I might receive more insight and clarity about how to move forward in different areas of my life? So sometimes we also have to clear space so that the vision can come forward. Other times the vision is there and then we have to make space or plan for it, but it can go either way. So let's see. I think that's about it. I think that about covers it. I hope that this has been interesting for all of you. I will be coming back soon. I want to mention something for all of you, two things, two little things. One is, remember Venus Cazimi. I talked about Venus Cazimi earlier this month, and I said the Venus Cazimi and the full moon in Aquarius, watch for the a big surge upward of women in power, and watch for the theme of insiders versus outsiders. And I said, wouldn't surprise me if someone in the news, women, political, became very visible. I'm not at all wanting to toot my own horn. I want to show you that astrology works. Look at what happened right as that was all happening. The 4 congresswomen that Donald Trump has enjoyed targeting, he targeted once more and specifically called upon Israel to ban or block them, to make them outsiders. So you had insiders versus outsiders. Then he called out Israel, Jewish people. He said, if you vote for Democrats and you're letting, I don't know what he said, he had some insult, and I don't remember what it was, but it was basically like he ripped on Jewish people if you vote for Democrats. Now, I'm not trying to say any of that is here or there. I'm just trying to say, look at how the theme of insiders versus outsiders surrounding the empowerment of women, look at how that played out. I mentioned it so much, and sometimes I realize that I don't always take the time to show you how it actually played out. So I say, watch for this, and then I just assume you all watch for it. But in case you didn't, that was a pretty spectacular display of Venus Cazimi. The next thing I want to tell you, the last thing, I am trying to do a little bit better about promoting some of my services. I don't like to push that stuff too much. My readings tend to book out 2 to 3 months in advance. So right now I'm booking through about the end of November. If you want to do a reading with me before the end of the year, I suggest booking now. Things fill up for me really rapidly around this time of year. People like to do kind of year-end review stuff. So you can do that at nightlightastrology.com. You can check out the readings page there. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at nightlightastrology@gmail.com. I recommend people start with the comprehensive reading. It's a good starting place, my comprehensive birth chart reading. But you know, if your budget is can't go that way, the basic reading is good too. For some people, if you're going through something that's really intense, you're going through a deep kind of transformational crisis of some kind, the expanded reading is a good one to go really deep into something. Okay, so that's shameless self-promotion number 1. The second one is that my next course starts on November 16th on Saturdays. It's a 1-year course in Hellenistic astrology called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Meets on Saturdays from noon Eastern to about 2:30 p.m. It's a year-long program. It's great for people who want to dive into ancient astrology and learn how to read for others. It's a very interactive classroom. You can also check out everything about that class on my website at nightlightastrology.com on the certification course tab. I have a new website that's coming out pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. I'd love to see some of you in class soon. I also always have financial aid available for people who need it. You can check that out on the courses page as well. So thanks for hanging with me. I hope that you have a nice, you're going to see all this Virgo energy coming through in the next week. I hope it goes well for you. Please tell me your story. Tell me how things are going. I'll be checking back in. I've got a bunch of videos I'm going to be catching up on after not having internet for a week. So, okay, take care, everyone. Bye.